Hello, ladies and gentlemen out there in podcast land. This is Mr. Wills.
This is Brittany.
Brittany, how are you doing today?
Good. I say my name the same way every time. I should switch it up.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, it's a reliable way, but I mean, I don't say.
Old
wrong.
Reliable. You can't go wrong.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. Speaking of old reliable, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. We're talking about today, of course, the 1987 classic sequel to The Experience in Sheer Terror, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. This is my favorite of the entire series. We're doing Evil Dead 4 for 40, which means we're doing 4 episodes. Compact episodes as we reminisce our favorite parts about the Evil Dead franchises. We already did episode 1. If you haven't listened to that one, go check it out. And we also covered a little bit of Within the Woods on that episode. Brittany, are you ready to dive into Evil Dead 2?
You know it.
Well, the only thing I have to say to that is groovy. All right. Well, now that my cheesy jokes are over, we'll get right into it. So, when did you first see Evil Dead 2? We talked about how you discovered Evil Dead, but do you remember this one? Because you said you forgot when you exactly watched Evil Dead 1 for the first time. Do you remember seeing this one? I believe you brought it up a little bit in the podcast, but remind us.
Yeah, I remember seeing this one more than the first one. But I think I saw it in college around the same time as my first one. So for some reason I couldn't recall the first one. I think it was, college partying, watching Evil Dead. I might have forgotten a little bit of the first one, we could say. But I remember the second one a little bit more, specifically the laughing furniture room. I think I can't remember. I might have watched them all in close proximity, or we might have done a marathon. I can't remember. But yeah, two stood out and 3 stood out too. Well, technically Army of Darkness, right? Don't call it 3.
Well, I would love to hear their actual title for that used, Medieval Dead, but we'll get into that later. But that was one of the titles that they wanted to do is Evil Dead 3 or Medieval Dead, which I think is a great name other than Army of Darkness. But this is the Evil Dead 2 episode, damn it. Not the Army of Darkness episode.
It's a teaser. You need to come back for part 3.
Gotta come back for part 3. So, just diving into this. So you said you saw it at a college party.
Not a party.
A
party in my own house. I wasn't a big partier. I was a homebody. I was throwing a party with my 2 roommates that lived there and didn't go anywhere else.
So that's a party. It's more than 2 people's a party.
It's a party of 3. We also did off topic, but we also did the Alien movies because my boyfriend at the time had never seen them. And we also did Back to the Future because he hadn't seen those either. So. Oh,
you said your boyfriend at the time. I assume you broke up with him after he told you had not seen the Alien.
Yep. He was out the door. And then he said he didn't like him. So I was like, you're out.
You're out.
I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. But that's the scenario. But there is alcohol involved.
Okay. Well, I consider that a party. But I'm lame, so what do I know? So I always thought, I'm going to jump right into it here. Once again, this is free jazz. This is our love letter to the Evil Dead movies. As a kid, I saw this. So once again, I'd seen Army of Darkness first, then I rented Evil Dead 2 from the video theater across the street from where I lived. Shout out to Video Theater Akron, Ohio, actually Talmadge, Ohio. Rest in peace. That was one of my favorite video rental stores of all time. Cool staff there. There was a guy that actually was a DJ on the local underground college station that played like all kinds of crazy Typo Negative and crazy metal and got me into cool shit, new metal.
He knew the good stuff.
He knew the good stuff, and I recognized his voice. And I said, "Hey, aren't you the dude from B-Rock?" He's like, "Yeah, but shh, like be cool, man." And then he would always like, he's like, "Rent this, rent this, rent this." He was a good dude. So yeah, we're back, and I never got that. It's not Ash going back. As a kid, I was dumb because I was like, "Why is he going back? If he made it out of the cabin, why is he going back?" But apparently I wasn't alone in this. What did you, you were at college, so, and you had actually seen them in sequential order.
I had half a college education behind me, so I think I got that it was a different thing. I don't remember ever feeling confused about thinking he went back. Yeah, I just thought it was like kind of an alternate version of what happened, which is kind of sort of what it was. So I don't remember ever being confused by that, but maybe it's because I'm smart.
It's because you think you're better than me, and you probably are. So yeah, yeah. I think Greg Nicotero said something in the beginning that he thought that they shot a whole new opening with 4 people, and if you listen to the commentary on the Blu-ray, which is from the original Laserdisc commentary, Sam Raimi disputes that. He doesn't remember reshooting it with 4 people. It gets pared down to just Ash and Linda. Now, and according to Bruce Campbell, there is a great video on YouTube that you can check out. It's him talking about, is it a remake or a prequel or a requel, and he said if you want to line it up perfectly, do your own cut. You go to the very end of Evil Dead where the evil is chasing him through the door and knocks down the door and is screaming, and then jump cut to the scene of him getting pushed through the woods and smacked with all the trees. And they, according to him, Sam Raimi had a real fun time driving a truck and smacking him through trees and slapping him in the face with branches.
Maybe that's what aged him in those few seconds.
Well, that, and remember he falls in that giant mud puddle and then turns evil, so I think the evil getting inside of him had aged him at that point. So what did you think of Denise Bixler as the new Linda? I mean, I loved the old Linda, but she was like a dancer. She was really athletic, but I want you to get your opinion on it. I thought that she brought some different kind of physicality to it, which I liked.
I agree on the physicality. I think I like the original Linda better for just her acting, maybe. I don't know. It might be a weird thing to say. I don't know if she was necessarily a better actor than the other. But I just kind of liked her character and the way she acted it a little bit better. But I feel like you see Linda for a lot less time in the second one compared to the first, before she gets taken away and demonized. But I love her like body acting, her physical acting. She had a lot more going on there compared to the first movie. So I liked her. I don't know. I liked her for different reasons.
I agree. She did do some body acting, so much that when her head was removed from her body came in and tried to attack Ash with a chainsaw before he could chop her up. And that was actually Greg Nicotero puppeting the chainsaw body. But that was great. I just loved how into it he was with the chainsaw body, and how bloody it was. There's a lot of great behind the scenes features on the Blu-ray of just video that Nicotero shot. This essentially led to the birth of KMB, which is Nicotero, Kurtzman, and Berger. Now, Kurtzman isn't really with them anymore, but he's still good friends with them. But Howard Berger and Nicotero are still doing it to this day. They've worked on so much. But this was their first film together, and Rick Catazone from Pittsburgh did the armature for the hand, so that's cool. And obviously of Creepshow fame and from the Romero crew. There's so many cool special effects in this. Tom Sullivan actually helped out on this one as well, which we talked about him before in the original Evil Dead episode. Steve Wang made some puppets. Legendary special effects artist Steve Wang. So many people worked on this, which I thought was cool, and it really tells you that it takes a village to make an awesome movie. Bruce's brother Don, which I did not know, who I've met actually, he built the cabin. Yeah, Don Campbell. I met him when I went to go see the Tom Sullivan documentary in Detroit. He was there. He was in the documentary, and then I went to the lobby, and he wasn't like signing autographs or anything. I'm just like, "Oh, you're Don." He's like, "Yeah," and I got a picture with him, and it was cool. And a lot of the people that were in the documentary were there, so it wasn't like the Hollywood guys, but it was like the side actors from the Raimi film. So it was kind of cool. But I digress. What were some of your favorite parts of the special effects in this movie?
Well, like the laughing room, which I already mentioned.
Hands down. Hands down. One of my favorite
good.
scenes I lost it when I first watched that because you don't expect it when he sits down
No.
and the chair breaks.
Which is hilarious in itself.
It's so comical. The chair breaks, and then just the deer's head and the like the Foley, the sound of it cracking its neck, and the laughter of the deer fucking got me. Like I lost it.
I know, and it's so like you said, it's so unexpected. And it almost seems like it shouldn't fit in this movie, but it does. It pushes the line of just being too campy. And then it like gets to that peak and then knows when to come down. And I know in the commentary for the Blu-ray, Bruce was like, that was a really hard scene because you have to go from like maniacally laughing to suddenly being like really serious, scared, and just kind of losing your shit. So he's like, you have like 10 seconds, of film time on his face where he has to go from one emotion to the other so quickly. And while all this crazy stuff's happening and the whole crew is like in all these trap doors, like flinging stuff around and having a blast, which sounds like probably the most fun scene to film for like the cast and crew. They pretty much made everybody that was there come make an inanimate object laugh. So I think that sounds really fun. Yeah, there's a ton of good stuff. And then the rotten apple, all that stuff is good. But I don't know. I guess it's kind of funny that my like favorite special effect is kind of that one.
That's a good
despite
one.
having so much like impressive blood, gore, all that stuff. It's hard to say a favorite, but that one always stood out to me the most because it was just wild.
This movie's a roller coaster, and that comes a little later in the film. Like I said, we're not going chronological, but that's after he chops his hand off. So I always, like as a kid, once again, I was stupid. I was like, why did his hand go bad? Why did his hand go bad? And then I'm like, oh yeah, Linda bit his fucking hand. Because I never understood. I know I'm dumb, but as a kid, I'm like, I didn't correlate that bite turned his hand bad. Because there's a scene after, Linda comes back, she gets taken, she comes back as a deadite, she starts dancing, chops her head off with the shovel. Then he goes to chainsaw her up, which is funny because as he's fighting with the head, as it's biting his hand, he says, tool shit. But it's like bad ADR. And he said Kurt Russell gave him shit about that on
Really?
the set. Yeah, on the set of Escape from LA. He said, say tool shit for me.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So I thought that was great.
It almost sounds like he's saying bullshit.
It's a very bad ADR, but it's hilarious. Yeah, it's just why this is great. It's memorable. But yeah, as he's getting ready to chop up Linda, we talked about the scene where she busts him with the chainsaw, and then he does the deed, he buries her, and then later on he's like looking at the mirror, which I love. One of my favorite scenes where they did like the reflective pool mirror, and they have a stunt double, and he reaches out and grabs himself and says, you just cut up your girlfriend with a chainsaw. Does that sound fine to you? And I'm like, as a kid, I love this shit. Like, I wish I could go back. I know this movie too well now, but I wish I could go back and experience this all for the first time because, like, as a young teenager, like all these scenes blew my mind. It compounded as like to this, to this, to this, to I'm like, his girlfriend getting taken away, him killing her coming back after he chops her head off, him getting the chainsaw, then her biting him and his hand turning bad after the mirror scene. It's just like shit. Like every single scene in this movie is pretty fucking great.
And it's all connected so well. It's like so subtle, but like it's all set up so well.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's the brilliance of Sam Raimi. He's actually a joke teller. He's a comedian, but he uses film as his medium. He always sets up gags, and the payoffs are great. So he's like, this is his set, and that's how I look at Sam Raimi. This came to me recently. It's like he's such a jokester, and if you ever hear him do interviews or commentary, he's got like this jovial, like cantankerous love for life that he just loves to prank people and fuck with people, and that's how his movies are. And that's why I think this movie captures the essence of that in the best way possible. Army of Darkness does too, but I just love this. I think this one, it's got the best of both worlds, the gruesomeness and the hilarity of Sam Raimi married into one.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, like, the jump to Army of Darkness, which we'll get to, the jump to that, I feel like, is the only direction he really could have gone after such a perfect balance in this movie. It's kind of like when we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then the second one's a lot more like just over the top. But I feel like that's the only direction you can go at that point, you know? Like, you can't make the same movie again, or you could, but I feel like it's the best choice for what to do next.
I don't think you could have made the original Evil Dead again. And I agree. So yeah, so you have to keep true to the thread of the story and the vibe, but create. I like that better. I think that's cooler. I mean, I love horror movies probably more than anything. Like, they're my favorite genre. That doesn't mean I see every single horror movie that comes out. It's got to vibe with me just right. You know, everybody's like, oh, you must love Conjuring and all those movies. And, like, they're fine, but I don't get excited for every single horror movie. It's got to have that right mix. And I think that's what's good with Raimi and a lot of the directors I like is I can feel the mix. Like, and with that being said, is if you've already done straight horror, if you've already done the most horrifying movie you can make, well, let's make a send up. Let's keep the gruesomeness in it, and then let's do an action adventure movie next. But you know, why are we limited? You know, so as it's otherwise you're just going to end up with a law of diminishing returns. It's going to be lesser than different. So I'd prefer different than lesser than.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. So let's talk about the narrative of this movie. We've kind of been hopping around. So Ash doesn't come back to the cabin. It's just a quick recap, truncated version of the first one. Then we find out that there are other players in this. Annie Noby, played by Sarah Berry, who is actually Dr. Noby's daughter, who's coming up to the cabin with, I think it's her boyfriend, Ed, who is, I think they're just archaeologists, like Dr. Noby was, or, you know, I'm pretty sure that's what she does.
Wasn't her family's cabin?
It was her family's cabin because her dad was Dr. Noby, who found the Necronomicon, started doing the translation.
So that's why they're there, right? Because her dad or whatever found it somehow or acquired it, and then she found out about it, and they're going to check it out, man, because they're archaeologists.
And then Professor Noby, we'll see him in a flashback, played by John Peakes. I really do love his readings in this, and he does a really good job. And Henrietta, his wife, played by Lou Hancock, she just seemed like the sweetest old lady. Later on, do we find out? Maybe not the case. And then Jake and Bobby Joe. So early on, Ash tries to leave the cabin, and there's a cool miniature shot where he pulls the Delta up, and the bridge is actually bent back. And I'm pretty sure that's Rick that worked on that. That's what Sam said, but it looks awesome. It's like the bridge itself is clawed up. And there's a great sign. There's a great shot of when the evil's chasing Ash. It actually has like a French Dutch angle.
A French angle? They got the French angles going on.
It actually has a Dutch angle. So when it's, it looks really cool coming in, and it smashes through the back windshield and chases Ash to the front of the car. That's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
That reminds me, it's funny that sometimes the entity can just bust through your back window, but then other times you can just shut a door or just go around a corner too fast, and the entity's like, oh, I don't know where he went. I guess I'm just gonna peace out. Entity is easily confused.
It's weird. It does seem to have separate rules for separate occasions. Example, when it has him in the very beginning and it's pushing him through the woods, and he falls in the biggest fucking puddle ever. It looks like a little puddle, but like when he dives into it, once again, a great shot. He's like completely saturated, and as he comes up, he's turning into an evil Deadeye version of Ash, which we'll call back to here later in the movie. And then the sun, for some reason, turns him good again, which in the other, or no, I'm sorry, is it the necklace that he gave his girlfriend? I think it's the necklace in the sun. Yes. if I remember correctly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because
the combination.
Yeah, what he gives Linda, the piece of jewelry he gives Linda, that's what it was. That turned him back. But it's, I believe so. I've watched the movie 100 times, but I'm always
I feel
confused.
like it kind of implied that it was the sunlight, but maybe a combination of both. I don't know. Now I have to go back and watch. There's always something new to watch.
Exactly. So you bring up a good point, is that the Kandarian demons seem to have different rules depending on the situation. So maybe they're just fucking with them. I don't know. I know they thrive on torture. We see that a little later in Ash vs. Evil Dead, that they get off on that. So maybe that's where Sam Raimi's mindset was.
If you're not scared enough, they can't teleport around the room if you're not scared enough. If you're brave, then they have to run at you at a normal person's speed to make it fair.
They've never explicitly said that, but it seems like that is an unspoken rule. Almost like they feed off fear, like Pennywise.
Yeah. Yeah, the more scared you are, the more like powers that they suddenly get and more they can do to you. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good theory.
That's a good observation. So, back to the Rec Road, we see Jake, played by Dan Hicks, and we have later on Bobby Joe, which I believe is his girlfriend, which I don't know how he landed her, but Jake is just some hillbilly. He's there. Annie Noby and Ed meet up with them because they're trying to get to the cabin, but the road's out. So somehow they make it through the woods okay. Now this is concurrent with Ash just having that crazy spell from everything laughing at him. He hears them knock and then he shoots at the door. Surprisingly, no one was killed because Ash is a pretty good shot, but he shoots out the door and then he's met and tackled by Jake. Like I said, played by Danny Hicks, late great Danny Hicks, who is awesome. And if you haven't seen Intruder, check him out in that. He's such a good dude. I got to meet him before he passed on, and such a lovely soul. Rest in peace. But in this, he plays a terrible hillbilly, which I love as well. What are your impressions on the people that have joined up with Ash at this point?
Well, yeah. So our first impressions are that they kick the shit out of our hero, our poor tortured hero. Before they realize that they've made a mistake. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Annie and Ed are a little power couple over there. Jake and Bobby Joe don't seem like they should go together, but the more you like kind of see Bobby Joe's like attitude and like toughness, I kind of see it a little more. They're fun side characters that come into the mix just at the right moment in the movie because it goes on for about as long as it can with just Ash and, Linda being taken out pretty early, but I think they push it as far as they can, and the characters that they bring in are just as wild as the plot.
That's a great point. It's you torture Ash as much as you can. Now I'm just gonna pontificate on one of my favorite scenes in the entire film, right before these people show up. When Ash's hand goes evil and he just starts beating the shit out of himself, he's doing pratfalls and he's smashing plates over his head right before he hacks it off. That's Bruce Campbell throwing himself around, showing you that he's the master of slapstick comedy. And Sam Raimi overcranked the film a bit, but it's all Bruce Campbell, like taking those bumps and just beating the shit out of himself. And I never get tired of watching that. And I feel so bad for the guy, but it's just hilarious, like, to see this dude do that. And it ends, once again, in a horrific spot of him taking his hand off. And you actually hear him say, "Give me back my hand." And Sam Raimi does the voice of the hand, and you hear a little, "No!" which I always laugh about. And then he buzzes off his hand and walks around the rest of the film without a hand. Which, obviously, or does he?
Yes, or does he? Well, we know he gets creative. It's already established. He's just as creative in the second film as he is in the first. Maybe even a little more.
Yeah, I would say so. The first one, he was, like you said, he was kind of a wimp. This, he's like cutting his hand off and killing his girlfriend and grabbing a shotgun. He's being a total badass.
A little less reserved.
Yeah, he's done fucking around. He's got his boomstick, and then later on we'll see what he does to replace his hand. So yeah, I didn't want to skip over that. The hand, all the stuff with the hand is great. there's a when he tries to go, the hand's running away from him and he's trying to shoot it. When he initially cuts it off and he puts it under the bucket, it says the book he puts on is A Farewell to Arms. That always makes me laugh. Just sight gags like this, and that's what makes this movie great. When he's blowing holes in the wall and then he just gets hit with the wall starts bleeding, and then out of nowhere it's just like a deluge of like the like gallons and gallons of blood that like eventually turns black, and it's just like this poor guy, just the hell he has to go through before. And these people have no frame of reference. They just think this guy's a maniac. To bring back around to them showing up, they're like, they don't know the hell that this poor guy's been through.
No, not yet.
Not yet. But they'll soon find out.
Yeah. That might be my other favorite, like, effect scene is all the blood. And then how at the end, they just, like, suck it back into the wall. It's just this thing, all this blood, and then it just reverses.
Yeah, the reverse shot with that. And then earlier, too, like, when the smoke is billowing up, when he's turning back into the good ash, which we were talking about before, when he was outside, the smoke is billowing up, but they shoot it in reverse, so it looks like it's being sucked down into the ground, and he's reverting back to his normal state. I thought that was cool. There's a lot of cool reverse shots like that in this film.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, Bobby Joe, the character Bobby Joe, Jake's main squeeze, she, and I never knew this, is modeled after Holly Hunter, who I love Holly Hunter. She's great. She was great in Crash, David Cronenberg movie. If you haven't seen that, check it out. But that's one of my favorite performances of her. But she's been in everything. She was in I believe she was in The Burning. Yeah, she's in The Burning. It's good stuff. And obviously, I think she was what show was she on? The Practice? Closer? I don't watch those shows.
Oh, no.
I watch horror movies. She was on one of those shows. But she's been in so much stuff. But Holly Hunter is so great. And I guess Scott Spiegel, who co-wrote this with Sam Raimi, and who was actually in Within the Woods, who played Scotty, he was living at a house where she was living there, and he kind of modeled the character design off of her for Bobby Joe. He said one time she was dressed up and all sassy looking, as he put it, and he said, "Hey, Holly, you really look good. I hope it's okay to say." And she's like, "Well, I'm reading for a part of a hooker, so I don't take that as a compliment." So she was dressed up as a hooker, and he complimented how well she looked, which always makes me laugh.
Oops.
All right. So after they throw Ash down into the cellar, because they think he's a madman, they find the tape, the reel-to-reel, and then they play it, and you hear the incantation. You hear the history of what has happened with Dr. Noby, and you hear the incantation, and then we realize that Henrietta turned evil and is now buried in the fruit cellar where our hero Ash currently is. So now he's trapped down there with Henrietta. So, and the madness starts to ensue.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's kind of a side note, but Ash's character takes a real solid tumble down those stairs if you watch, and there's like a couple angles that make the stairs seem really long. But apparently they just had his stunt double, which has the best name ever. He sounds so cool. John Casino, which I love. I don't know why I love it so much. But his stunt double Jen went down the stairs, I guess, 3 or 4 times and just really, really went for it. And you see like the steps break, blah, blah, blah. So he threw himself down the stairs a few times from different angles to make it seem like a really long staircase, breaking like a bunch of the steps on the way down, which I find the shot looks really painful. And then 2, like I said, I just think he has the best name ever.
John Casino, when you listen to the commentary, they said that Bruce Campbell did a lot of his own stunts, and but he did credit John Casino for doing this. And Sam Raimi was talking about John Casino and the fact that Bruce Campbell did most of his own stunts. Like what you just said with him falling down the stairs, that was one of the few times they actually used him. And they said because of John Casino, they didn't want to take a gamble. That killed me. Oh, man.
So they play part of the tape. They realize what's going on. And Ash eventually comes back up the stairs trying to get out. And then they do let him back up when they realize that shit in this cabin's really funky, you know?
Yeah. And well, the funny thing is I like how when Annie starts reading the Necronomicon, all of a sudden she's a genius, but she's like, oh, fuck this guy, you know? But to be fair, he did shoot at them. So,
well, yeah.
I'm just going to rattle off here about Henrietta, evil Henrietta, played by Ted Raimi, which was Sam's brother. He was like 20 years old at the time. The makeup is amazing, and all the behind-the-scenes footage of it is really cool. You really see the latex suit, and I guess it was so like hot and sweaty that it started to tear, and there is actually a scene in the movie where you can see a tear in the crotch if you like slow it down. But Ted Raimi really just kills it as that character. He's just like evil. It's one of the best portrayals of a Deadite ever. I think Henrietta is my favorite Deadite. His cackles and his laugh and his acting is like an old wench, I think, is one of my favorite things. It is. It's great. And when she's trying to convince Annie to let her out of the cellar, and Ash just grabs her and just grabs her by the wrist and gives her like the no. He's like, don't do it.
Yeah, she looked slightly convinced, but I don't think she was. She's one of the smartest characters to catch on. Maybe it's because she kind of knows a little bit about the Necronomicon, as opposed to everyone else, like in the series. But she already kind of doesn't believe that that's really her mom. But yeah, all it takes is a slight like shake of the head. She's like, okay. That's about it. I mean, she starts walking forward like she believes her, and I think that's kind of like maybe to trick the audience and to trick Henrietta. She takes a couple steps forward, and then she's like, yeah, you're not my mom, bitch.
Well, so later on, poor Bobby Joe, they're fighting off Henrietta. Ash, they stomp on her fucking head and shoot the eyeball straight into Bobby Joe's mouth, and that poor girl, and that's enough for her. She runs off into the woods, and it's a very similar tree rape, but actually they don't show it. They imply it's more of a tree fondling, which is still, there was no consent given, so it doesn't bother me as much. There was no tree consent given, but she's more or less got the vines up in her face, and she's dragged. Essentially, it's like she gets skipped across the forest floor until she explodes, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I also thought the sound design was really good for that. And then they talked about this in the commentary as well, but while she's getting attacked by the trees, like what would you expect to hear? I don't know, creaking of trees and like ghostly demonic mumbling. No, they go with like flies buzzing. Flies, mosquitoes, bees, whatever you want to say, a combination of all of them maybe, but it's like trees. And then they decide to overlay it with just like the buzzing of bugs, which just gives it just a more like skin crawling feeling to the whole scene. It's just, ugh.
Yeah, it really sells it. Yeah, with the whole vines going into her face and stuff. I agree. That's really, that was awesome sound design there. I got to give it to him. We're just hopping around here. Then Evil Ed at some point becomes infected. They kill Evil Ed. He's not long for this world. They chop up Ed with an axe. And the way they were trying to keep this movie from getting an X rating is they shot green blood all over the place. So when he kills Ed, for some reason Ed has green blood. There's supposed to be more scenes, and there you can see it in the behind the scenes, Evil Ed being chopped up more, and then there's pieces vibrating and squirming around on the ground, but they ended up cutting that to, I think, save the rating or save some time. But that was pretty cool. So Ed has met his demise, and then poor Bobby Joe has met her demise. Henrietta returns, and Ash carves himself up a witch. But before that, he has to go to the tool shed. And my favorite scene of any of the Evil Dead movies, any of the Evil Dead lore, the comic books, the video games, any of that, it's the scene where Ash and Annie walk into the tool shed, and there it is. Chainsaw, he constructs it, puts the metal ring on it, connects it to his missing hand, fires it up, cuts off the end of his boomstick, Now we got the double barrel sawed off and the iconic line, groovy. Nothing beats that. It never gets old. I know it's been done to shit. I know it's like cheesy now.
It's so good.
But like in that moment, no one is cooler than Bruce Campbell ever.
Oh yeah. It's such a cool scene that nobody cares that it's out of focus.
Oh wow.
Which is incredibly apparent in the 4K version. Of course, I never really like noticed it before. I did see this when they released the 4K version in an OmniMax. So it's like the biggest insane viewing you can have of the movie ever. The poor thing's just so out of focus when it's like being shown in OmniMax, but that's a testament to how cool the scene is and how it builds up, because it's still iconic and amazing even though it's out of focus and I have to bring it up.
Yeah, so many great scenes, just like the one that you shat all over, but that's okay. I don't care that it's out of focus. One of the best shots in Dawn of the Dead is out of focus, where the guy gets flipped off the motorcycle and then they all go to attack him and he picks up his Tommy gun, completely out of focus. It was dark. They didn't have fucking iPhones back then. They didn't have color. They didn't have light. What is it? Light testing? You know, you work in the industry. It was just a guy in the fucking, you know. I mean, yes, this was a bigger budget movie. Should that have happened? No. Does it wreck the scene? Absolutely not. I love this movie, warts and all.
Oh, yeah. It's great. It's great. No, I shit on it just because that's just what I do.
You're trying to get me fired. You're trying to get me fired.
I'm trying to get you fired from the podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. You're doing a great job.
All right. Well, now that I've shit all over your scene.
I appreciate it. I think we need to give a shout out to Senior Cajones, which, thanks to Deadites Online, this is a good resource if you need to look up anything. Senior Cajones is the rat who lives in the cabin. So this was his house first, and then these assholes showed up. He's just trying to enjoy himself. It was funny that the evil hand does get snapped by the rat trap early on, and then subsequently gives Ash the finger. So, which leads into him being tortured even more with the blood shooting all over him, as we mentioned. But yes, Senior Cajones, I think he just deserves a certain nod. I wonder what he's into. I wonder if he was in other films like Willard or, Ben or any other rat-driven
films. He was the hero rat. I don't know. We'll have to look it up.
We'll get back to you in our future episodes to see what happened to Senior Cajones. I hope he's okay. I hope he's living the good life of a rat. Wherever you are, we wish you greatness, Senior Cajones. Later on in the film, Ash turns evil again. He gets the pages of the book back, but then he's dealing with the evil overtaking him, and he fights it off again, but not before he terrorizes Annie. So this leads into one of your favorite scenes, was actually a callback to Within the Woods. Do you want to set this up, Brittany?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you listen to the first episode, it's almost shot for shot, but I'll set it up again for you. So it would be Jake that's out in the woods looking for Bobby Joe, you know, his iconic line, his 15 minutes of fame here, Bobby Joe, Bobby Joe. So he gets scared, and I don't blame him, but he gets scared and he's running back to the cabin. We have Annie. She has the dagger at this point. She's freaked out. She's kind of boarded herself up in the cabin because of evil Ash being evil again. And she's standing by the door, just like Within the Woods. And guess who happens to barge in? Jake. And she immediately stabs him, this poor guy, and falls to the floor. She's like blocking the door so the door can't be shut now. Of course, he had to be stabbed inconveniently in the doorway. And so she's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. You know, I think it's evil Ash that's coming back, or just that sense of the entity coming back. Like, she knows she can't be having that door open for so long. You know, you got to get him in. So she's like trying to shut the door and he's smashed in it. She's like, oh yeah, I guess I better pull him in. So she's like struggling to pull him in, pulls him in almost all the way. And of course, like slams his feet in the door for one last good measure. Finally gets him inside, shuts the door, and then like drops down to kind of see if he's okay. And of course she like drops down and stabs the dagger in a little deeper. He's like, oh, you know, just like Within the Woods, everything exactly the same, except for where it changes here in this version, which continues to be like such a great scene. She's like, oh, we need to get you to the living room or whatever. So she's trying to pull this, like, I don't even know how much he weighs. He's got to be at least 200 pounds. So this little Annie's like trying to pull this 200-pound like hick down the hallway into the living room, really struggling. He's like yelping and screaming every time she moves him. And she's just fed up with it. And it just cracks me up that she starts yelling, shut up, shut up to this poor guy who's in so much pain. She's telling him to shut up. And I just find it so hilarious. The whole interaction, I can't remember if they mentioned if that was scripted or she just added that or what, but it was just, it's hilarious. It's another like kind of dark humor added to the movie that's, it's just so funny in such a dark way.
I love that scene. It pays off even better when she pulls out the Kandarian dagger from his wound. He's spraying blood. She's dragging him, like she said, like legitimately dragging his ass across this beat up wood floor of this cabin. The cabin, by the way, was actually shot in a gymnasium on stilts, so it just makes me laugh just thinking they're like in this old abandoned gymnasium, like doing all this crazy shit. So poor Annie is dragging Jake's huge ass, and she's just trying to get him in the living room, but she puts him too close to the trap door, and this is before Ash has put on his chainsaw hand. He's still evil outside. Henrietta bursts through, grabs his ass, and just pulls him in, and it's just like a fucking fountain of foamy blood. The foamiest blood you've ever seen. And it just sprays all over. It sprays all over Annie, like, comically long. Which at this point, she's still holding onto his leg. There's nothing left. She's just, like, gonna pull back. I kept waiting for the legs to snap off at some point, but it was just, it's hilarious. And that leads into Ash going into the tool shed. My favorite scene. Who cares if it's out of focus? Going back down, getting the pages that Jake found there, and leading up to the battle between Henrietta and Ash, and the famous line, I'll swallow your soul, swallow your soul, swallow your soul. Swallow this. And then the shotgun to the face, killing Henrietta once and for all. The transformation in that scene's awesome. It turns into a real ugly snake-looking thing, and I like it's kind of like stop motion or blue screened, where it's just like Bruce Campbell jumping and punching the air, where they animated the stop motion effect of the clay deadite version of Henrietta in there. I thought that was really cool. I liked him hitting it with the chainsaw, and then the pieces just floating off one by one. I thought that was a great shot. There's a lot of Three Stooges, Ray Harryhausen shit going on here, but still a great fight scene in my opinion. And the one scene you can see where Henrietta is spinning around, you see like a glob of fucking sweat just dripping out of the ear because Ted Raimi was sweating his ass off in that suit. And that's the scene, if you slow it down, you can see the tear.
Yeah, the tear in his crotch.
yeah.
That adds so much to the scene. Like, it's so nasty to think that the sweat in his suit was built up that bad. Like, I can't even imagine. I'm surprised he didn't get, like, heat stroke or something, but...
He was 20 years old. That's the only way he survived. He was a young kid.
But so nasty. But I think it adds so much to the scene where it drips out of the ear. Like, it looks like they meant to do that because all the demons are just so pussy and disgusting. Like, it was perfect. It seemed like it was supposed to be there, but it's interesting to know that is his sweat buildup.
In the backstage scenes that Nicotero shot on his home video camcorder, you can just see fucking the sweat just getting wrung out of the foot. Like you see poor Ted Raimi, and the amount of time it took to put him in that suit. That poor dude.
Yeah.
And hats off. He deserves an Oscar for that. He really does. Ted Raimi's a hell of a guy. Unfortunately, I haven't met him. I did go to the Horror Hound where they had the Evil Dead 2 reunion, but he was sick, so he didn't make it there. But everybody else I got to meet, and they were super cool. And the Q&A was pretty good, except it was like when the remake was coming out, and they kept asking questions about the remake, and I'm like, this audience is fucking stupid. Stop asking questions about this remake. It's just
they weren't even part of it, really.
No, it's just fucking. I'm gonna go on a rant here, but it's disrespectful. Like, these people were in this film, and they made this film, and you can ask them any question you want, and people just keep asking questions about the fucking remake, which they had nothing to do with. Bruce Campbell was the producer, and he kept he was emceeing, and he kept steering the question. And then at one point, he just stopped asking questions to the audience because he knew that they weren't going to be about the remake. It's like, shut the fuck up. But there were some funny nuggets where he said Danny Hicks, when they were fighting, him and Ash were fighting, he kicked him in the nuts, and they would really beat each other up. But no, I love Evil Dead 2. We're getting to the end here where this is cool, and you really notice it on the Blu-ray. On the beat-up VHS copy, I didn't notice the detail as much, but the trees with the faces, this is like the first time we really see that, and we really don't see it again in any kind of Evil Dead movie or anything like that, where the trees have like a weird yeah, I love the evil trees, and I think they're very underrated. I thought like how they had carved the evil faces into the evil trees, like they're subtle. I mean, they're subtly shot. Like he doesn't zoom in on them, but you can see them.
Yeah, it's nice detail. They're exclusives.
They're exclusive to Evil Dead 2, but I love the Evil Dead trees. Speaking of that, Annie realizes the only way to stop the evil is to manifest it into a physical being. So she reads the passage from the Necronomicon. That's why Ash needed to go get the pages. And it manifests itself into a physical form. Now, as a kid, once again, I always thought I was dumb. So I was like, oh, that's the thing that's been chasing him? Like, why didn't they show that? Like, but as an adult, I'm like, oh no, you fucking dumbass. They had to manifest it into that first. So I was always curious as a kid what the thing was that was chasing him. I thought it was a gag. It's like, what does it look like? I want to see it. But I also didn't want to see it. I didn't want the gag ruined. But then when you see it manifested, you're like, holy shit. And that is what we know lovingly as Dirty Rotten Applehead. And which I heard at some point was in a haunted house. I'm sure it's all rotted by now.
Actually rotted.
Literally rotted.
Truly rotted.
Yeah.
It's destiny. What a like unexpected manifestation. I definitely didn't expect it to look like that. And I mean, I guess it makes sense. There's a lot of tree themes. I mean, they are in the woods, you know. Poor apple tree out there got sucked into the deal and manifested itself into a nasty old dirty rotten applehead.
It took me as a kid. I never, like I said, I was a dumb kid at certain points. I just always assumed that that's what the evil was, and this was just one manifestation of it. But I think it's one of my favorites. And as a collector, as an adult, I don't buy everything Evil Dead, but I do get some toys here and there. We've never had a good Dirty Rotten Applehead to my knowledge. Like, no one's made that figure or that set. I would love that.
I'm surprised. That'd be a cool, like, model or, like, a miniature.
Yeah, like a maquette or something. Yeah, I want to see a Dirty Rotten Applehead maquette. If anybody's listening to this, let's make it happen. I want to see Dirty Rotten Applehead brought into existence in some kind of cool toy form. Maybe it exists, but not that I've seen.
Yeah.
And I figure that would be a big idea, or that would be a big to-do.
Yeah, you would think so.
Raise that up, the idea to do that.
We'll have to see if it's an overlooked item.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite scenes, they manifest it. Actually, Annie manifested it. Let's give credit where credit is due. Annie Nobe, as you mentioned earlier, you want to give a shout out to her as being one of the strongest female leads in all of the Evil Dead films up to this point.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. She's smart. She catches on to what's going on quickly. And she could train a little better on arm day when it comes to dragging fat old guys around. That's her only downfall.
Are you're body shaming Annie right now?
Hey, I said she was smart. No, I'm just kidding. She's smart, but she's weak. No, I'm just kidding. No, she's great though. She just needs to drag around more men.
She does need to drag around more men.
Practice.
She knows where she's going, so she doesn't need to drag around men. Men are following her. Ed knew that, but Ed followed her right into his demise, unfortunately for him. Annie says the second part of the incantation, which is to banish the evil. So before she can finish it, or as she's finishing it actually, our old friend Ash's hand makes a return and stabs her with the Kandarian dagger.
Yeah.
ultimately killing Annie in a act of heroism. So R.I.P. Annie. But I think Annie Nobe was one of the coolest characters in the Evil Dead zeitgeist, if you want to call it that, lore so far. Her dad was kind of an idiot and got his wife possessed and caused all this shit. Ash was an idiot because he showed up there with his friends and kicked shit around and started reading the book. But Annie was the smartest one, and I don't like how she was rewarded for being smart and tough and independent. So if that happened today, they would cancel Sam Raimi for her death.
Getting stabbed in the back.
Don't stab a strong, smart, independent woman in the back. God damn it.
Don't do it, guys. That's good advice all around.
Yeah.
Take it.
Oh, man. So shame on you, Sam Raimi. Shame. But yeah, but in her death rattle, in the throes of death, she gets the rest of the incantation, and a giant portal opens up, which is super cool because right before this, when the rotten apple head manifests, it screams or like breathes on Ash, and he gets a streak of white, which one of my favorite scenes, like there's a white streak in his hair because he's like scared so much that it turned his hair white. And Sam Raimi on the audio commentary said, I don't know if many people got that, and I got it, but I just don't understand why it wasn't in continuity. Like later on, now I'm gonna bitch about the continuity of the Evil Dead movies.
Oh no.
That'll be on the 4th episode. But yes, no, I mean the continuity on these movies is fucked. You just have to strap in and just go with the flow. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you don't really see it again. I mean, I think a little in the Army of Darkness, but it's not really. Yeah, I think they kind of, brush over it. The fact that he had the white streak in his hair, or maybe he cut it out. I don't know.
Yeah. I always thought that was a cool little thing to do. Kind of random, because there's no lead up to it, and like you said, don't necessarily see too much of that happening again to any character. Yeah, still a neat little detail. I also want to say the Dirty Rotten Apple Head seems like it might have been the inspiration to half of the bosses that you see in the Resident Evil games these days. It's always like a large head busting through like a wall or a window, and you have to shoot the eyeball or the tongue or a branch. But maybe it was the OG inspiration.
It sounds like it. I mean, it predates everything Resident Evil, so I'll definitely say. I mean, I didn't work on the film, but or any of the Resident Evil games, but I will say it was definitely the inspiration. I loved when Ash when it grabbed Ash, like his branch fingers, like that's one of the coolest effects too. That's what I want to see on the toy. I want a toy that grabs Ash that you can put Ash in his dirty, rotten little apple head trunk fingers or his branch fingers, and then it closes and it pulls him in, and then Ash jams his fucking chainsaw right into his eye, and like all this grayish mud blood starts shooting out, and then there's like the souls of the other people that the Deadites have captured, the Kandarian demons have captured, which is cool because they did something similar to that in Nightmare on Elm Street when Freddy would kill the kids. Their souls would go into like his pizza chest, which is kind of cool. Like his burned up chest. So.
Yeah.
So as Annie finishes the incantation, the wormhole opens up, and I love this. This was the coolest thing. This is what sold me as a kid. Like when you're like a 10-year-old kid watching this shit, at least a little boy, dude. I love this. I was like, you got shotguns, chainsaws, demons. You got a fucking giant vortex that like pulls, like it's just like, and I love like the effect of like Ash trying to hold on. He's like, good God, how do you stop it? And like he just gets sucked in, and then I was like, it's great. It's like one of the best things since I saw Army of Darkness first. There is a recap, also with a different Linda. A different Linda, but still the scene from Evil Dead 2 of him, like the bare bones of him getting sucked in there and like through the thing. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then like my aunt and uncle were showing it to me at the time. Like you don't need to watch that one. You could just watch this one on its own. But like that scene like piqued my interest as a kid. I'm like, I want to see that shit. Like you're just scrolling over that shit. I want to see what happened there. That looks cool as fuck. So that's why I watched Evil Dead 2 first, because I'm like, I want to see like what that scene's all about. And then I'm like, little did I know, like that whole fucking movie was great. This whole fucking movie is great. This is my love for horror. This is my love for campiness. And I think this is Sam Raimi's best movie. It really is. You know, he's done some great movies since then. And Drag Me to Hell is great. So Drag Me to Hell was very, very much in the vein of Evil Dead 2. I think it was like a return to like comedy and gross out horror. And so if you haven't seen that, check out Drag Me to Hell. But I really thought this is Sam at his apex. He's like full creative, and then he doesn't have too much studio money, doesn't have too much studio interference. So it's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think with certain directors, you get a sweet spot. It's like the same thing with Romero. He had a sweet spot where it had the money he needed without the studio interference, had the people and the ingenuity and the creativeness of the team around him brought the film, like Dawn of the Dead or Martin together. Same thing with Evil Dead 2. Had the creativeness of all these brilliant filmmakers, be it special effects, actors, set designers, writers, with Scott Spiegel. I just like all the cinematography, the cool shots. This is Sam Raimi's tour de force, in my opinion. Nothing beats this. I do love Army of Darkness, but Evil Dead 2 is the best. And as he gets sucked back into time, he ends up in the Middle Ages. And Sam Raimi gets his cameo in. And, hail the prophesied one that has fallen from the sky to save us from the evil. That's something to those lines, to that effect. Also, in the before this happens, though, you can see briefly in the book, there's a picture of Ash in medieval times, so it's prophesized in the book. But he's wearing white pants. That was the joke. Is that when whoever drew that page, they weren't sure if it was Tom Sullivan or not. For some reason, at the day that he was drawing it, Bruce was wearing white pants, so he drew Ash with white pants in the book. Yeah. But that was one of the coolest things too. I loved that as a kid too. I thought it was cool that like the whole setup, the imagination. I think that's why I love this movie so much, because I can still, no matter how bitter and old and sick and just fed up with bullshit I get, part of the like 10-year-old me, 12-year-old me is locked into this film because of the imagination of Sam Raimi. And it's just, he's like, yeah, there's going to be demons and there's this tree shit and there's this, but it's prophesized that he was always the one to fight this. And I just think that's an awesome nod. Like, it's actually in the book that this is his destiny, you know?
It's like almost like a closed loop or whatever. It's like it was meant to happen. It was always going to happen, no matter what. It
was a big loop. He falls from the sky with the Delta. I always love that.
Yeah.
The Oldsmobile Delta gets sucked in, and I don't know if they used the same shot or recreated the shot, but the way it's shot is the Delta and Ash hit the ground at the same time. Once again, one of my favorite shots. I just like they drop and they hit at the same time, and it's just really effective. And this scene is washed out, and it's really like drained of color, which I think is cool because it makes it look like it's, you know, old. You know, it's meant to look like it's an old medieval tale. Yeah. So I guess washing it of color lets you know you're in the past. I like that little effect, how they made that work there. So they hail him because there's a ancient Kandarian demon already in the past waiting for him with wings coming down to get him. Pulls out his boomstick, blasts his head. Great creature effect. And just guts, brains everywhere. Then they realize, let's hail him. He's our savior.
Chosen one.
And he's the chosen one. And as, once again, poor Ash is stuck in the past. It's like, can you just imagine that? And like,
can't get a break. He just wants to go home and take a shower.
He just wants to get out of there. He killed his fucking girlfriend. He met these new people that initially tried to kill them. Turned out to be decent people. All of them got killed. He's turned evil twice. This poor fucking guy, he had to chop his own hand off. He does have a badass chainsaw hand, but now he's in a fucking place where there's no gasoline. He's in a time where there's no gasoline. So how the fuck is he gonna power up his hand? We'll have to find out.
He hasn't even had a nap.
He has not had, and more importantly, he has not had a nap.
Yep.
I think I think that's another thing about Evil Dead 2, the enormity of it. When you look at it through the vision of this is a part of a story, it connects this very terrible, crazy, gruesome story of this poor guy in the cabin with his girlfriend, his friends, his sister, has to kill all of them to barely survive, to live out the rest of this hellish night. I imagine it's over 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this all we have to remember, in continuity, this all happens to him in the course of 24 hours, pretty much. He kills all of his friends, including his sister and his girlfriend. Then he gets possessed. Then he beats the possession, but he has to cut off his own hand, and when it becomes evil, it tries to kill him. People show up who mistake him for an asshole. Well, he does shoot at them. They try to kill him. He survives, becomes evil again, has to battle more Deadites, but he gets an awesome chainsaw hand upgrade. So, I mean, it's not all lemons, but like the shit that Ash goes through in a 24-hour period. Then at the end, everybody dies. They manifest the evil. He defeats it, gets sucked back into the past, and now he's stuck with no way to get home.
He's a changed man in a changed time.
He's a stranger in a strange land. He is a changed man in a changed time. It's great. I mean, I fucking love it. There's a cool scene at the end of this movie where they're stabbing the Oldsmobile with swords, which always made me laugh. Like, what kind of armor is this? I think they said. What armor is this? Who's the Oldsmobile? Hey, what is that? Hey, what horse be this?
Yeah.
I kind of went off there, but that's my final thought. I think the enormity, the importance of not only Evil Dead 2 as a movie in the history of horror, but it as a movie in the canon of, Evil Dead saga, for it to marry an awesome horror movie to an awesome high medieval action adventure movie, which we'll get into on our next episode. And in its own right, it's just a fucking great flick. I think it hits on all levels. 5 out of 5, man. Evil Dead 2 is my favorite, hands down. I love it.
I always have trouble with final thoughts. It's probably my favorite out of the 3. If you just are talking about the 3 movies and nothing else, I really like where they went with it. Like I mentioned, it kind of reminds me of Texas Chainsaw 2. It's like it was the perfect direction to go with it. It's such a fun watch, and it borders on being too much, but it doesn't go over that edge, and that's what's so special about it. And it just had the perfect people all working together. You had a great team, the right amount of money. It came out at the perfect time. Everything lined up perfectly for it to be the success that it is.
Hats off to everyone that worked on Evil Dead 2. Dead by Dawn, it is my favorite horror movie of all time. I never get tired of watching it. Like I said before, I don't analyze it. I forget parts, but that's part of being a fan. It's just like watching movies over and over. I love to be surprised by it. I love to forget a little bit about it and watch it later. Or, I don't watch it all the time. I think sometimes, you can just watch things ad nauseum and it just takes all the fun out of it. But to me, Evil Dead 2 is like my warm place movie. Like I could always watch this. It always makes me feel good, and it's enjoyable every single time. Thank you, Sam Raimi. Thank you, Bruce Campbell. Thank you, Scott Spiegel, for writing a hilarious script alongside with Sam Raimi. Thank you, everyone. Rest in peace, Danny Hicks. Love you, and and thank you, K&B, for coming together after this amazing work that you've done, and all the special effects artists that worked on this film did a great job. I love Evil Dead 2. It will forever be my favorite movie, and that's all I have to say about that. Until next time, when we're dragged in to see Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness. This is Will.
And this is Brittany.
And I'm saying from Signals of Pittsburgh, stay groovy.